Great. Let's start today's session. In this session, let's understand Lao Tzu, Tao Te Ching together. Capturing the core message from Tao Te Ching. Words are never the thing, but can one go beyond the verse to get the meaning? See the truth of it. This quality much matters than merely playing with the verse. Most people's mind is rather verbal. Therefore, very chattering, because the mind is always functioning in verse, which is convenient. But the fact is, verse are never the thing. The description is never the described. If one can't go beyond the verse, then everything is verbal. Which has no meaning. Therefore, in this session, can the mind give full attention? When the mind is in full attention, the mind is not agreeing or disagreeing. But when the mind is agreeing or disagreeing, there's only argument, discussion. Which is mere the continuation of the verbal state of mind. When the mind is in full attention, we see the same thing together. When we are seeing the same thing together, there's no agreement or disagreement. Please see this, the absolute truth of it. When we see the same thing together, we don't agree or disagree. So, in this session, while understanding Tao Te Ching together, can we see the same thing together? When we still use the verse to point to that, can the mind see that thing which is beyond the verse? So both of us need hard work full attention, diligence, to go beyond the verse, so that the true communication between you and me can take place. In this session, let's find out the true meaning of non-doing. Perhaps some people may also be familiar with the Chinese pronunciation, 无为, which is literally translated as non-doing in English. As we are seeing, words are never the thing. That's why it is very important, very essential for us to find out the true meaning of non-doing. What is that? How can we apply that to our actual living? If we don't apply, non-doing is merely an idea, a thought. So now, let's penetrate together through the verse and compound the truth those words are pointing to. Truth is always in a state of non-doing, where the mind and the body, which are one, can do anything unknowingly. This is one of the most important message from Tao Te Ching. Truth is always in the state of non-doing. To understand non-doing, we have to understand what is doing. Why the mind is always doing something about it. When one is really observing seriously, it is not difficult to find. The mind has such a strong tendency or urge to do about it, do something. The action is based on desire, thoughts. And those thoughts and desire come out of this very limited personal experience. And in that doing, numerous conflicts and the contradiction is created. And this is most people's life with such action. Such action, which is propelled by thoughts, is never complete. Therefore, such action inevitably brings about conflict. And this action is everywhere in this world. Therefore, everybody is in contradiction to each other, also to themselves. Perhaps such action is not action at all. It is merely a reaction. And such living is devoid of authentic action. It is full of reaction. And the mind has reduced the action to various reactions. And this world is becoming more and more degenerate, corrupt. There's no authentic, total, whole action. There's only reaction, propelled by all kinds of fragmented thoughts, ideas, illusions. So this sort of doing denies truth. Our life is a mess. This whole world, politically, economically, commercially, is also a mess. Totally chaotic. And the mind keeps doing out of reaction, out of its own beliefs, narrow ideas, pleasurable thoughts. One thought is against another. Therefore, the action, which is reaction, is also against another. There's no harmony, naturally. Isn't there? So, to understand the non-doing, one must observe its tendency to do something out of the reaction. Observe completely the mischief made by the thoughts. In leading to various problematic actions. So when the mind is actually observing that, can the mind note that thoughts propel the doing? Which is the essence of non-doing. It does not mean that one does nothing, but one only does when thoughts are not making mischief. Non-doing means never do anything propelled by the mischief made by thoughts. Then this question naturally arises. Is there an action that is not propelled by thoughts? For most people in this planet, life is full of action propelled by thoughts. This whole society is also based on thoughts, creating such a mental construct. Which propels all kinds of actions, so-called actions. One man is really observing with intensity and seriousness this mental construct of the society. One must find that there are numerous contradictions, absurdities. When the mind is trapped in this mental construct of the society, now its behaviors is full of absurd actions. One contradicting another. Therefore, life becomes utterly confusing, conflicted, and contradicted. So the mind is conditioned to this sort of action, which is merely based on thoughts. Like duty. The duty is also thoughts. The mind is merely conforming and imitating. Therefore, in that conformity and imitation, there's only doing, which denies the truth in every way. Non-doing implies or one must stay away from this mental construct. Denies it completely. Never conform. Never imitate. One must observe completely and act upon truth, not upon what is being told, what is specified in the book, or duty. Duty is really an ugly word. A mind that is acting upon duty is mechanical, callous, brutal. Seeing that, the danger of the doing, propelled by so many pressures, not only the inward pressure, the urge, the desire, also the outward from the so-called society, culture, tradition. Can the mind commit to non-doing without yielding to all kinds of pressures? Another important message from this sentence is that the mind and the body are one. When the mind is doing upon the duty, all kinds of thoughts, there is a rule which is called the doer, the ego, the self, the me. As long as the mind is conforming to a thought, to a pattern laid down by thoughts, there must be a doer, the self, the me, the ego. And in that state of mind, it feels that the body is something external, because the me creates a very closed center. And this habitual thinking is so deep-seated, especially in the Western world. And the mind and body issue becomes a philosophical question. That can never be answered by the self, by the ego, the me. But when the me, the self, the ego is totally absent, the body and the mind is one. So to answer the question of body and mind verbally has no meaning, because it is still the ego that is thinking, analyzing, and answering. And the ego is full of doing. Its fulfillment, its ambition, its dream, its goal. You see, the mind is always achieving something when the ego is there. Therefore, the ego is always doing something. And in that doing, it feels that the body is something external, which is an illusion. And also at the same time, the ego feels so true. It seems that the ego really exists, but actually, it is an illusion. Absolute illusion. You see, when the mind is doing upon thoughts, it not only creates the ego, but also distorts this perception completely. And when the mind is trapped in the ego, which is the mind is doing, all to numerous reactions, thoughts, beliefs, and those contradictions only bring about problems, stalemate, contradiction. Therefore, the mind is trapped in contradiction. It can do nothing. But though it always has the tendency to do something, but actually, it can do nothing. And the mind is suffering. Which is actually taking place all over the place. When the mind is really in a state of non-doing, the me, the self, the ego is totally absent. The action is not propelled by thoughts and all kinds of fragmented experience, idea, but out of totality, when the mind observes everything completely. And in that state, there's no conflict, there's no contradiction. Therefore, the mind does not suffer. It can do anything unknowingly. However, to understand these things completely, you must test out in your living. Words are never the thing. And you must leave that state to find out what is the true meaning of non-doing. Let's read again together. Truth is always in the state of non-doing, where the mind and the body, which are one, can do anything unknowingly. the absence of desire leads to silence, and the whole world becomes quiet naturally. And most people's action, so-called action, is propelled by desire to fulfill, to become, to achieve, to reach. Therefore, the mind is restless. One man is looking and observing carefully, seriously. One must find that one desire is always in contradiction to another desire. When everybody is chasing their own desire, we don't meet. Do we? Because the very pursuing the desire has already isolated the mind. And out of that pursuit, fulfillment, the action is always contradicting another action. So people argue, people fight, creating all kinds of issues. Not only the so-called societal issues, but also tremendous psychological issues, suffering and sorrow. And nowadays, the mind becomes more and more fragmented. One person may have many desires. So there's this inner conflict, stretched by different desires, different directions. So the world is restless, noisy, and chattering. And this whole society, especially in this Western world, gives tremendous importance to the self. But see the consequence of it. We don't see the danger of the desire. We just merely want to fulfill the desire for pleasure. We don't really observe what is actually taking place in this world, because the mind is only concerned about itself, for its own fulfillment, pleasure, gratification. But see this world as it is, the noise and all kinds of self-expression everywhere. All kinds of doodles, all kinds of advertisements, all kinds of way of expressing. Because the mind is full of desire to express, and also out of its utter isolation, because the desire isolates the mind. But this attraction to fulfill the desire is so strong. So can mind observe this fact, the physical danger of desire. It is not to say that we have no desire, but kind of mind be silent, so everything, including the very necessary desires, stay in the right place. Virtue does not necessarily express itself. Therefore, it is moral. When the mind is trapped in its verbal state, as is taking place now, all the world, the mind always wants to express itself. Want to leave a good impression on others. Wanting to influence people to their own favor. So it is the doing, right? The opposite of non-doing, the doing, which denies truth. Because the mind only cares about express for sense of fulfillment, a sense of existence. And in that expression, it creates numerous problems, conflicts. Here's a very simple example. When the mind sees the comments from various people, what is the direct feeling of that mind? This feeling of conflicts, contradiction, is naturally there. Because everybody cares about their own expression. But one expression is always contradicted with another. It's always in conflict with another. Therefore, virtue is never in the field of doing. Virtue is non-doing. Otherwise, there's a subpar virtue, which is a conformity to the morality. Therefore, it is immoral. When the mind is conforming to something so-called morality, which are mere some verse, thoughts, that conformity is still doing. Like duty, the mind is conforming to some rules specified by verse. And this action, based on verse, the duty, is mechanical. And that doing denies truth, which is virtue. One may conform to the morality to behave well, but inwardly, the mind does not know what is goodness at all. Therefore, that conformity is still a way of expression. I conform to the so-called morality to behave well, which gives me a sense of high regarded, being respected, still pleasure. But actually, the mind doesn't know what is actually goodness. And only a mind that never conforms or imitates, which is the essence of non-doing, can understand what is goodness. So it is something very important for each of us to come upon. The fact that conformity and imitation is doing, but truth is only in a state of non-doing. When it observes the actual danger of conforming to something. And the mind is lazy, isn't it? It conforms to something which is easy, but it is mechanical and very destructive. Because such a state of mind does not care about goodness at all. Virtue is non-doing because of inward non-doing. Subpar virtue expresses non-doing, but inwardly there is doing. This sentence well corresponds to the previous two sentences we have looked at together. It is easy to conform. But it's not easy for the mind stays in a state of non-doing, inward non-doing. Which demands diligence, tremendous observation. Otherwise, the mind merely conforms, but it is still full of doing inwardly. Therefore, it still creates conflicts, problems. One may hide that, but one knows the feeling. Because this is a law of nature. Truth, the non-verbal thing, which is embodied, which is embodied by the outer softness, can penetrate anything that has no crevice, which is embodied by the outer hardness. When the mind is really in a state of non-doing, it is soft, full of care. It sees the danger of doing and the consequence of doing, with all the travails, miseries, sorrow of the humanity. Therefore, such a state of mind is compassionate. It understands, actually, the suffering of each human being. Because the mind is always doing this egocentric state of mind, self-centered state of mind. And when the mind is doing out of the desire, fulfillment, duty, various fragmented thoughts, ideas, such a state of mind is very hard, very harsh, cruel, callous. When this world is full of all kinds of actions propelled by duty, as it's taking place now, all over the place, the world is very hard. This cruelty can be perceived by each sensitive mind. And this world becomes more and more dehumanized. And the mind who is acting upon duty is hard. And it is itself also suffers. And that hardness also brings suffers to other people. And this ego thing is such a peculiar thing, very peculiar, because it not only suffers itself, also brings sufferings to other people, to other minds. So can one live upon truth? When one is really living that way, truth is a fact. This softness, this care, this compassion can penetrate any hardness. When one stops imitating or conforming, one denies this monstrous world completely by living in truth. This inward non-doing. One becomes a light, not only to oneself, but also to all the hurt people. And such power is beyond any words. Because living in truth is a state of mind that is free of any hardness. such a living becomes vulnerable, but also powerful. Even if there's only one or two people or small group of people living in truth, this world would have become different. Therefore, I actually see the benefit of making no mental efforts, non-doing. Can one see the benefit of non-doing? Actually, not through the words of the speaker, but come upon the unspeakable benefit of non-doing. When the mind is doing, the mind is making numerous efforts, mental efforts, to become, to achieve, to have, to reach, to fulfill. And such a state of mind is hard, harsh, careless, indifferent. And such a mind suffers also creating havoc on others. Therefore, this whole world is devoid of harmony. Why? Because almost everybody is living in such a self-centered way, with numerous mental efforts. The doing, which denies completely non-doing the truth. And such a living with full of strife, endeavor, efforts, desire is meaningless. Because the mind is confused and trapped in endless issues brought about by this sheer ignorance of the truth, the benefit of making no mental efforts. A mind that makes no effort can achieve anything unknowingly, winning over the world by making no trouble. Look at this world, economically, politically, commercially. There are so many people making efforts. Out of their own desire, their own idea, experience. Many of them are living in a leading role. So-called leaders, political leaders, commercial leaders, and so on. their own efforts bring the illusion. And the ideas and the actions based on those illusions, the oscillations, is only creating havoc on other people. So there are all kinds of shocking rules, shocking regulations, but still, the issues are not actually solved yet. Instead, there's only more trouble in the world. So when the mind is making efforts, the mind is full of issues. As we have looked together into this session, the mind is full of contradictions. Therefore, it can do nothing. Because the mind is already paralyzed by numerous reactions, resentment, contradictions, confusion. So the mind, which is making efforts, gets confused. And in that confusion, it makes more efforts, which becomes a vicious loop. But the simple message, which is also the truth, is that can the mind observe completely? And let action take place upon the totality, not based on one's very narrow ideas, focuses, desires. Can the mind be quiet? Not trapped by desires, by seeing clearly the danger of the desire, the fulfillment, and all the rest of it. You see, truth is counterintuitive. The mind tends to add more and more and more. But can the mind empty everything completely? Thoughts have their places in our life, but psychologically, can the mind not accumulate thoughts, ideas? When the thoughts have been accumulated psychologically, it creates the me, the self, the ego. Then the action is a mere reaction, only perpetuating the misery, the conflict. So come to this point. The essence of non-doing is to live life where the me, the self, the ego is totally absent. And this must be embodied by your actual living, actualized by your actual living. Great. That's all for today's session. We have inquired together the true meaning of non-doing and effortlessness. Hopefully, this discovery, this inquiry, can facilitate the mind to compound the truth, which is beyond any verse, any description. The actual living, the authentic living, is beyond any verbal things. And hopefully, more and more people could give attention to this fundamental issue of living. Understand, find out the right way of living. We only live on this planet for up to 100 years, if one is lucky. There's no point wasting time or energy into all kinds of meaningless thoughts. One is really living at this moment. One must see the urgency to live in goodness, with care, live with full compassion, love. The meaning of living only exists in this moment, when the me, when the ego is totally absent. And hopefully, more and more people could live with that beauty. Take care. See you in the future sessions. Bye.